Welcome to another episode of Euphoric, the podcast. We are doing a really fun Dry January series. So if you are doing Dry January, if you're interested in the phenomenon, if you have been alcohol-free for a long time too, and you want to share this kind of information with your community, I think it's so good and insightful. Be sure to go back. This is our third Dry January episode in the series. The first one is all about the mindset shifts you want to have, like how to actually not want to drink, not just not drinking. There's a difference, right? There's a difference between just not doing something that you want to do versus not wanting to do it in the first place. And that is the place you want to arrive. And that's why those 6 mindset shifts are going to be so helpful, and it's going to make or break your month. So be sure to go back to that episode. And then last week, we also did a fun one on the weird side effects that happen from Dry January. Most of the stuff is so good, but I kind of wanted to have an episode where we talked about that weird stuff, the sugar cravings, the wonky sleep, all that kind of stuff. So be sure to go back to that one. Today, we are talking about what actually happens to your body on a biological, physiological level with 31 days alcohol-free. This one is so exciting. I have talked about it before, but I don't think I've ever done a podcast episode about it. So I went really deep into the science, a lot of facts that I got from my book that came from research and sources that I have and scientific studies, and I added some more, and more research has come out since my books come out. So I just have so many fun things to talk about today, because it's just kind of crazy how much your body will change if you don't drink for 31 days. It's insane. And so without further ado, let's just get into it. I'm going to start with the first few changes that happen the quickest, and then, obviously some keep stacking, so something might be happening in your brain in the first 2 weeks, but then it can keep stacking and stacking and stacking the longer you're alcohol free. So when appropriate, we'll get into that as well. And if you're new around here, my name is Karolina Rzadkowska. I'm an alcohol-free empowerment expert. I also train coaches to become subconscious change experts and help other people change their relationships with alcohol and give them all the business training they need. That is in the 5X certification program. Our next round begins in the spring, so be sure you get on the wait list so that you get notified when it opens. And without further ado though, let's get into these changes that happen in the body. Okay, so when I wrote my book, I didn't know about this stuff. I think the gut microbiome has really taken off as something that just more people are aware of and things like that. So this is some new research that came to light to me as well. And, apparently when we're drinking, our gut microbiome is not too good. It's alcohol is fostering more of the bad bacteria in our gut and not fostering that good bacteria. It really disrupts the delicate ecosystem that you want in your gut. But what's really, really cool is that your gut microbiome will start improving within days alcohol-free, just days alcohol-free. And by 3 to 4 weeks, the gut microbiome improves dramatically. Now, I didn't really know very much about gut microbiome a few years ago, but I've been on a fertility journey, and I've now done 2 gut microbiome tests. And you know what you have to do those tests? You have to collect some feces. So that's all there, but it's just really interesting. There's just so many bacteria, and it's not that there's necessarily some bacteria are bad, but there's always a level that your body can handle. So there's a level of candida and pathogens and stuff like that that's really normal. And then there's overgrowth when you have too much of the bad and not enough of the good. And that's why probiotics are so popular these days, because they're helping promote the good and stuff like that. But fun fact, alcohol really disrupts your gut microbiome. And so if you have any issues with digestion, bloating, constipation, any of the nutrient absorbent as well, this is so important, how critical alcohol is to this. And I have another colleague who speaks all about this, just how alcohol affects the gut. And there's just such incredible science to it. But how cool that within just a few days without alcohol, and then definitely by 4 weeks, you're already changing your microbiome and already promoting that healthier flora, the healthier bacteria. And why is this important? For those of us who are not on the trend bus, don't understand, it's 70% of our immune response is in our gut, right? That's where our immune response lives. So we want to have healthy guts so that we want to be able to stay healthy, fight off, any kind of pathogens or any other viruses or bacteria coming in our way. We want that beneficial bacteria to be able to stay strong and stuff like that. So what you might actually see on a physical level, obviously, if you're not doing a feces test, you might not know what's going on exactly in your gut. But from just some of the symptoms and things like this, you could expect to see like much less bloating. You can expect to see better digestion, more regularity when it comes to that, and better nutrient absorption too. So just knowing that the things you eat when we drink alcohol, alcohol depletes our nutrients. It actually like zaps it out of our metabolic processing, the way that we digest things. So that is not good. But you can just start to see that, without that alcohol, you're actually going to be able to absorb those nutrients better. And that's why these like gut microbiomes are so interesting, because you might be getting a lot of nutrients, but your gut's not absorbing them. And that's always something critical to look into. So you're doing the right thing when you are going alcohol free. And so not only is it the immune system, your digestion, it's also your mood. So most of the serotonin that the body produces actually lives in the gut, which is crazy. So it's going to affect a lot more than you think, and you might not know that that's what's really happening on the inside, but it's just kind of really fascinating, I think. Okay, the next category, blood pressure. Fun fact, I used to have high blood pressure. Anytime I'd get it checked at the doctor's office or like a clinic or, those CVS's and stuff like that, it was always above 120/80. And that really scared me, because I wasn't like 70 years old when I was going to get that test. I was in my 20s, my mid 20s. I was like, why would I have high blood pressure? I grew up as a ballerina. I got a lot of exercise. I ate maybe not the best, but I wasn't eating the worst either. So I didn't really understand why I would have high blood pressure. And it scared me, and I started reading. I remember I used to go to the library a lot this era in my life. And so I started getting a lot of books on how to lower your blood pressure. And there are all these like books that were written in like the 90s and the early 2000s and, by doctors and stuff like that. And so I started implementing some of the things I was reading. And one of the things I read was that hibiscus tea really helps. So hibiscus is that really beautiful tropical flower. And when you dry it up, it's like red. And you can usually buy it in a health food store or like a Mexican market, because they make a lot of agua frescas in Mexico from hibiscus. So here I am driving to whatever store has it. Sometimes I'd have to drive like 20, 30 minutes to go to a Mexican market just to find my hibiscus. And I have this like really visceral memory of opening the cupboards in my old house in San Diego and having like hibiscus flowers just falling out of the cupboards. I was this conscious that I wanted to change my health and I wanted to lower my blood pressure, but I wasn't willing to do the one thing that actually would make it so easy and just completely lower the number. And maybe I didn't know back then, and now I have the evidence, and now I can tell you right now. And so it's not just my anecdotal evidence. It has also been studied in huge meta studies that blood pressure can drop from just a 2-week break from alcohol. So by 2 weeks in, you can start to see those numbers dropping. Now for me, specifically, I've never been higher over 120 now ever since I stopped drinking. So not only did my blood pressure drop within like 2 weeks, I think I checked it at CVS in a matter of 2 or 3 weeks in my first dry January, it never went back up because I obviously stayed off of alcohol. Not right away. There was a little February that was damp, but if you want to go back into my story, you can. But after that though, it's not even a concern of mine. I don't even have to worry about it. So I think hibiscus tea is great and it's very healthy, but I don't like drive 20 minutes anymore to go find any because I just solved the problem already, right? Now, if we don't know the science behind it, when you have higher blood pressure, it's forcing your cardiovascular system to work harder. It's a silent killer too. So hypertension, any high blood pressure, it's not good for us. It can increase our risk of heart attack, stroke, kidney disease. And then, a lot of people are on medication for this. So it's just so fascinating to me that if there's one thing you could do and you didn't have to get on medication and you didn't have to go drive around town and go find hibiscus flowers, it's just removing alcohol. It's so easy. So you're going to see and notice, you might just be able to see this on the test, but you can also find that you have less headaches when you do this as well, because higher blood pressure can contribute to more headaches and stuff like that. And just like more calm in your body, right? We do want the lowered blood pressure completely. And then obviously down the line, you're lowering your heart disease risk, you're lowering your chance of heart attacks and all that kind of stuff. Just 2 weeks off alcohol, like, come on, why wouldn't people do it, right? It's just so simple compared to all these other complex changes and fixes that people try to do in other different ways, right? I'm going to joke about it a lot in this episode, but if the pharmaceutical companies could bottle the effects of alcohol-free living, if they could put it in a little pill, it would solve most diseases and most chronic issues that people have today, right? It's just insane. All right, let's talk about the brain a little bit now. So the alcohol is very bad for the brain. A lot of brain scientists are like completely really vocal about this area, and they really speak up and they use their platforms because it's just that bad, even just one drink a day. So oftentimes we think of health challenges and health conditions as like, okay, well, if you overdrink, obviously you're going to have problems. But it's really interesting when they're finding all these studies and this research to show that, yeah, no, just one drink or, just occasional drinking or having a few on the weekend, this is all contributing to this stuff too. So even just one drink will shrink the brain gray matter. It shrinks brain cells as well. And, there's that concept of alcohol being a poison and killing brain cells. Like, it is actually happening. That's not just like a joke someone made up once, right? This down the line can really contribute to dementia and to Alzheimer's risk as well. Really, really interesting. In just 2 weeks, new neurons and brain cells are being regenerated in the brain. It's also been found that gray matter shrinks for drinkers. So Dr. Daniel Ammon is a very popular psychiatrist and neuroscientist who has been able to actually take images of people's brains. And he finds that people who drink alcohol or smoke weed or do, some lifestyle things that aren't the best for us, they have holes in their brains. Like, there's actual holes in these areas of their gray matter. And then when he tests them when they get off of alcohol and stuff like that, and they regenerate, the brains regenerate. So alcohol will shrink the gray matter, and this makes this makes you foggy. This makes clarity really hard. This makes you feel just out of it. It's not this like full frontal lobe functioning that you want to have at all times. And that the longer you're alcohol free, the gray matter starts growing back within like 3 to 6 months. I know we're talking about the first month, but just being on the topic of the brain. And then once you surpass a year, your brain actually grows more than had you never been a drinker before, because you're learning all these new strategies for self-control and self-adaptation and stuff like that. So it's just really cool too to understand how regenerative and healing the body actually is as you are going through this experience yourself. So it's pretty interesting because for a long time, scientists thought that the brain can't change, that after we reached adulthood, the brain didn't change at all. And it's just not true, right? This is like neuroplasticity. This is how, new brain cells and new neurons and new neural pathways and gray matter is being built and grown and stuff like that. So you're reversing brain damage in real time. And you're basically like lowering against the threat of cognitive decline and stuff like that as well. Obviously, you're going to be lowering your risk for dementia and Alzheimer's and things like that. And just like, what are you going to feel that first month? You might feel a lot of that mental fog lifting. I remember that so viscerally, of especially the Saturday, Sunday, Monday feeling after the weekend drinking. It was so foggy. It was just like, I don't know, I wasn't creative, I wasn't sharp, I just wasn't on my A game. And I think most of us can be honest with ourselves that that's how you just feel after drinking alcohol. So you can start to see that mental fog lift. You could see your memory improving more. I think a lot of intuition and creativity also comes from this area, and that we can start to just have like greater ideas, like $1 million ideas, right? Why not, and just much better focus and concentration as well. So that's really fun too. Okay, let's talk about your skin next. So our skin, for those of the ladies listening, we care, right? We care about this. Nobody wants to start looking old and haggard and stuff like that. So much money is pumped into anti-aging, treatments with your skin, wrinkles, fine lines, all that kind of stuff. Women spend so much money on this. And it's just so fascinating to me that, again, it's kind of not very well known to the general mass public of how big of an effect going alcohol-free is on your skin. Because if more people knew that, would you rather spend like a couple $1,000s on Botox, or would you rather just stop drinking for a while and see if it does that? You know what I mean? It's like, what are you really willing to do to have the effects that you want? Why does alcohol make our skin look just horrible? I noticed it right away. Like, I remember taking a selfie. I think I was 4 weeks alcohol-free, and I compared it to just a few weeks ago. It was a night and day difference. First of all, I lost a lot of bloating. Like, there was so much bloat in my face before, and that's usually visible that a lot of before and after photos have, is there's so much more bloat in the drinking face versus the non-drinking face. The redness, like we can get really red and puffy. It can even break your capillaries. So you can have like little red dots on your nose and on your cheeks and stuff like that from the drinking as well. It's gonna make the skin look older, the wrinkles. It actually is breaking down collagen. Alcohol is breaking down collagen, right? Why would anyone who's obsessed with beauty and the way their skin looks want to drink alcohol? So, the skin is one of our largest organs. It's completely absorbing the things that we're taking in. But it does change. Like our skin cells are changing very rapidly. They regenerate, they cycle through a lot faster than much other organs. And obviously that's why when you get a tan, it doesn't last forever, is because you're getting new skin cells. So what's so cool is as you start pumping your body in with more hydration and not the toxic alcohol and eating better and stuff, you could visibly see a difference in your skin. It's not just the creams you put on your skin specifically, it's literally what you're ingesting that's creating those new skin cells on your face. So you're gonna see definitely less bloating, less redness, less puffiness. Fine lines and wrinkles can go down as well because, again, alcohol is breaking down collagen, the stuff that is making your skin elastic. And if you want to, just like do me a favor, go onto Google and search up before and after, quit drinking, before, after quit drinking. And you'll start to see Google will show you a ton of images of people who are showcasing their before and their after photos of before when they were drinking, after when they stopped. You can tell. You can always tell. You can see a difference. And I'm amazed too, it doesn't have to just be the heavy drinking. You can sometimes see it in people who have just the weekend drinks and stuff like that. You can see a huge difference in the way they look and their skin. So it's gonna make your skin so much better hydrated. My eyes got so much brighter. I don't know, my eyes were just dull. Every picture I have of me as a drinker, even if I wasn't drinking in that moment, my eyes are dull. And as a non-drinker, they sparkle, they're in life. I also smile different, which maybe is just me personally, but I feel like when I was a drinker, and I'm doing this for the video if you're watching on YouTube. So we do air the podcast on YouTube if you're listening on iTunes or Spotify right now, so you can go check this out. But I used to smile with this really just shut my mouth together and show my teeth, and my eyes didn't smile. So kind of like this, right? And now I smile with my whole face. I smile with my eyes. I actually smile. I'm happy. Obviously that's just me, but that change didn't happen until I went alcohol free. That's when I started to actually learn how to smile. And again, go check out our YouTube, give us some love there, subscribe, make sure you never miss an episode. It can be always fun to watch, I think, podcasts on video as well, watch them on your TV and all that kind of stuff. This is where the under eye circles start to go away. Again, skin just gets that gray ashen color when we can be drinking, more red, more just not vibrant. And now it's regenerating into this beautiful look. And it can be a 2 to 4 week thing. Again, I noticed it 4 weeks in. I don't know if there's an exact science, but your skin is regenerating every 2 to 4 weeks, like the skin cells. So that's why when you're rebuilding them, not with toxins, we have to think of it this way. Every day, your body is making 25 million new cells a day. What's making those cells is what you're ingesting. The food you eat and what you're drinking is literally creating those new cells. So when you're eating healthy foods, nutrient-dense foods, things with minerals and vitamins and hydration, you're getting plump, beautiful cells. And when you're feeding yourself with alcohol and maybe other processed foods and stuff like that, your cells are being creative out of this junk and out of this poison. So it's a whole new mind twist way of thinking about it. What do you actually want your cells to be made out of? And how do you want them to look on your face, right? So that's where that alcohol-free glow comes from. That's another thing you could Google, alcohol-free glow, and just see what comes up. You're gonna see it. You can't not see it, Some people also lose a lot of weight, and it's not even that much pounds. It's just this bloat. It's this heaviness, this body composition that just really focuses on storing more fat. Because honestly, alcohol blocks our nutrients, it stimulates our appetite, it is calories, obviously, and the body has to detox alcohol first. It can't detox the protein and the fat you ate in the meal if there's alcohol in the system. The body has to prioritize getting rid of the alcohol because it's a literal poison to the body. So what happens, I've seen this one influencer on Instagram who's talking about how an extra 200 calories of wine is not going to hurt you. It's not a big deal. And I'm like, oh my God, this bro knows nothing about metabolism. He doesn't understand that your body has to detox that alcohol. So then it's not prioritizing detoxing all the things or processing and metabolizing the things you actually ate that day. So that gets stored as fat. And yeah, the alcohol gets processed, but then everything else you ate is stored as fat. Plus, alcohol stimulates appetite. Plus, it numbs the signal to your brain that you're full. You've probably experienced that before though, right? You've probably been at the bar and you're just munching and stuff. We've all been there. All these things happening, and alcohol is blocking nutrient absorption, which means that even if you're eating pretty healthy, you got your, your cruciferous vegetables, your broccoli, all this kind of stuff. What's the point of even eating all of that if your body can't absorb it because alcohol is blocking it, which again also makes you hungrier. So a lot of people do see their bodies change, body composition change. Some people lose weight. If it depends again on other lifestyle factors. I don't want to give you like a panacea, like quit drinking and you'll lose 50 pounds. It obviously is going to vary for people, person to person, but changes are definitely made at that level. Okay, let's switch over now talking about the heart. So I'll be very honest with you, I have a podcast episode probably from like 2 years ago. I used to have like heart scares because I would feel pressure on my chest, and it was often after drinking that weekend. And I was like, holy shit, I'm a 20-something woman having chest pressure pains. Like, this isn't normal. This isn't good, right? Like, I didn't think I'd have to worry about my heart until I was much, much older. So again, I did a huge deep dive into the heart, started reading all the books on how to just have a healthy heart and all this kind of stuff. It became very, very important for me. Plus, my grandmother on my mother's side did pass away from heart disease. So just something I want to be really, really cognizant about and just make sure I'm doing the best thing for my heart. I knew. Do you know what I mean? Like, when you know that this isn't good for a certain thing? Like, I wasn't ignorant about this. I didn't know to the extent that I know today, but my body was already trying to tell me something. My body was already trying to tell me, this is too much on your heart. It doesn't like it. It doesn't like it. That is why you're feeling that pressure and that pain the next day. It doesn't like this. Cut it out, right? And I wish I listened a lot sooner because I was trying everything else instead of just focusing on eliminating the alcohol. Okay, so what is happening? Oftentimes alcohol is raising your heart rate with no related exercise. So that's not good. So we want our heart rate to go up when we're exercising. We don't want our heart rate to go up when we're sitting there and drinking. But that's what alcohol is doing to it. And what happens is over time, that makes your heart sag because it's going this extra exertion, but it's not actually exercising at the same time. It has to work harder to pump blood and to get the oxygen to your body. So it makes it really bad for your heart. It makes it sag over time. It raises your blood pressure like we talked about. It also increases inflammation, which for some people can really increase their cholesterol and their triglycerides. All these things that are not good, that is only leading to more heart disease risk over time. Again, there's been just a huge misnomer in our culture that drinking a glass of red wine is supposed to be good for you every day. There really is no truth to that. That's been completely debunked. It's called the J curve, where basically they used to study people who were moderate drinkers, who were really, really healthy, against people who didn't drink. And they found that the very moderate drinkers were healthier than the people who didn't drink. And so that is why everyone was saying a glass of red wine is good for you. And anyways, as computing technology got better and science got better, they looked at all those old studies and recognized they were totally flawed. They were picking people who were already very healthy, had gym memberships, drank a glass of red wine because they were well off, against people who either had to quit because they went into the rock bottom territory, so they drank way too much in their life, or they were comparing against people who had to quit drinking because they were already sick with a chronic illness. So those weren't apples to apples, right? Comparisons. So they got rid of all those, defects basically of the study, and they found there is no heart preventative protection. There is no J curve anymore. The healthiest you are means the least thus you drink, the zero that you drink, right? So the J curve meant that like the more you drink, the more heart disease risk you have, except for if you just drink a little bit moderately. Nope, that is completely vanished now. Anyway, I'm sure I've said this many times before, but it's just like, I wish I knew these things before, right? I wish I knew these things. So you can see your heart rate go down in just a few weeks off alcohol, around maybe 3-4 weeks. Again, it always depends on the person. So I'm saying things that come from studies and research. I'm saying things that I've also noticed in my anecdotal experience from my life and from my clients' lives. This one is from research that it takes about 3 weeks. But again, you might be a little different, but how cool? How cool is that to see your heart rate really go down? And especially if you have one of those Oura rings or something else that's a wearable that tracks your heart rate, it's really cool to see that. I think ever since Oura came out, Oura always is doing these articles about what going alcohol-free or taking a break from alcohol does on all your biometrics, because you can't dispute this stuff anymore. Like, it's so obvious now that we're actually tracking and we have so much more access to this data about our body, you can't ignore it. Like, alcohol throws your body into a tailspin for the heart rate, for HRV, for your sleep, REM, all that stuff, right? So it's just so much more obvious. So you don't want to have an elevated heart rate. It's going to put more strain on your cardiovascular system. Think of it almost as if your heart is running a marathon when you're drinking, but you're just sitting still. And you can feel it. Like if you remember the last time you drank, your heart rate was elevated. You could feel your heart beating faster. You know what I mean? So anytime you do have a lower heart rate, that's why athletes usually have such a lower heart rate. It's going to make it more efficient, your heart and its function and pumping out the blood to the areas of your body and the oxygen in your body that you want. So it's a good thing to have a lowered heart rate, right? And so you'll notice it. I hope you can pay attention maybe with a tracker. If not, you can always go to a clinic or your doctor's office. You can even count your heart rate, right? By like just, setting a timer for 60 seconds and counting how much it is and comparing it over the weeks as it goes, right? You're also going to notice like more calm because of this. You're going to notice way better sleep, right? So I can go into this next one, but your sleep can get a little wonky the first few weeks without alcohol, and that's just because things are rebalancing. So go back to my last episode about those weird dry January effects. But in the end of the day, like your REM sleep's going to get longer, your deep sleep is going to get deeper. It's only doing good things for your sleep. And that again can also take between 4 to 6 weeks to completely rebalance. But that's another thing that these wearables are proving to us is anyone who wants to be a scientist in their own life can just track it now. Take a night that you're drinking. If you have a wearable, track all your biometrics and then compare it a week later of not drinking for a few weeks or 2 weeks or whatever. You're going to see a huge, huge difference. And so the science is just so much more obvious now. We don't have to just believe these studies. We have the data for real in our lives, right? Let's switch a little bit over to blood sugar now. So blood sugar, glucose, these things are also really trending right now. Glucose Revolution by Jesse Inshipo, I hope I said that right. It's such a popular book. And it's all about how we can change our lifestyle to not have these huge spikes of blood sugar. There's also a lot of different, theories that a lot of the different diseases that we get in chronic diseases at the towards the end of our life, they all can be metabolic in nature, which means that every time our blood sugar is going higher, like, our insulin isn't working as well and all this kind of stuff. So it's really, really important. I think we're just paying attention to a lot more as a society. So your blood sugar can normalize 4 weeks without alcohol. Your insulin sensitivity can really improve dramatically as well, and your body can properly process glucose again. So for all people who are on GLP-1s or on pre-diabetic medication, like what a godsend it is to actually just go alcohol free. Like it's one of the most important things you could do for if you're worried about something, if you're worried about your cancer risk, your heart disease risk, your diabetes risk, like this should be the first recommendation that a doctor actually gives. And I wish that more doctors, offices, and med schools were actually training in this. Obviously, usually you graduate at a certain time and then the more research comes out, and it takes a really savvy person to always stay on top of the research. So there's a lot of really prominent doctors that talk about this all the time, especially from the functional medicine world, but not everybody knows it. Not everybody stays on top of it. And I wish more people knew, because it's just like, we could prevent so many of the problems. And I think a lot of doctors just don't want to have to tell people stop drinking, because it's a really hard recommendation to say, especially when you're not an expert in it. But I'm just stacking all these wins over here about like how the body changes, right? And, if we have that dysregulated blood sugar, it can lead to diabetes, metabolic syndrome, weight gain, mood, cravings, all this kind of bad stuff that we don't want. So we do want to have that stabilized blood sugar and stuff. So you might notice less crashes in the afternoon. You might feel less cravings over time. You might just have more control over your appetite as well, which is really key. So you might actually start to notice this stuff even without measuring your glucose, because that's usually a blood test that you have to do. Okay, this one's really cool. I didn't know this until just recently. C-reactive protein is something that they measure in a blood test to see how much inflammation you have in your body. C-reactive protein is one of those things that they measure to make sure, or to see if you've had a heart attack or if you have heart attack risk or heart disease risk. It's also something they measure for autoimmune diseases. So C-reactive protein goes up when you have more inflammation in your body. Crazy, but C-reactive protein drops significantly in a break from alcohol, right? It's the systemic inflammation that's going to be reducing in your entire body, and your body is no longer in that emergency response mode, which is really, really cool. So just so we understand, that chronic inflammation can be leading to all the major diseases, the heart disease, the cancer, the diabetes, autoimmune conditions, and stuff like that. And alcohol is one of the most inflammatory substances that you can put in your body as well. And again, a lot of the connection isn't really made in a lot of our modern mainstream health circles and stuff like that, but it's so critical. If you have evidence that not drinking alcohol for a significant matter of time, 3, 4, 6 weeks, whatever, is going to lower your C-reactive protein, what do you think that means for like what you should be doing, whether you should drink or not for the rest of your life? Do you know what I mean? It's just like the science is so clear about all these things improving in your body from a break from alcohol. And again, when they study this, they're not just studying the heaviest drinkers, they're studying moderate drinkers as well. So it's just really, really interesting to me how it's just not more prolific information. But hey, that's what this podcast is all about. So you actually might notice this effect. You could notice like less joint stiffness, less joint pain, less puffiness or swelling. You could see more skin improvements as well, because that inflammation can oftentimes show up as like redness or rashes and stuff like that. Definitely less brain fog. Maybe even like lowered sensitivity to allergies or allergens and things like that, and just more lightness in your body. Okay, let's go to the liver next. So a lot of these things are a lot less known, but most people know that the liver is definitely affected by alcohol. And that's usually what most people are scared of, is like, I fucked up my liver, right? I drank too much and my liver isn't too great. And it's really, really cool. I know we're talking about the effects that happen within, 31 days without alcohol, but the longer you're alcohol free, I think it's like 6 months alcohol free, I believe. Yes, it is. 6 months alcohol free, you can completely regenerate your liver. So like there is a point where your liver gets into very bad stages. If you ever have like liver failure or cirrhosis, or you know someone who does, once it hits a certain point, like there's no coming back. But if you're a little scared, 6 months and you can completely regenerate your liver. So it's just so promising to know that you're not doomed, you didn't F it up, it's not screwed forever, there's not damage that you can't undo, unless of course you went to that extreme. So they've proven that fatty liver disease can significantly reverse in 4 to 6 weeks by stopping drinking, and you can also lower your liver fat by 20% in a 5-week break from alcohol. Now I know 5 weeks is a little hair over 31 days, but we're gonna count it as well for this episode, because it's just another crazy thing that like you can truly, liver fat is what is the predecessor to liver disease. So if you knew that you're lowering your liver fat by 20% and can really significantly start reversing fatty liver disease, even for those of us who are more in the moderate side or the weekend drinkers or however you consider yourself, like everybody wants this, right? And your liver is the biggest detoxification muscle of your body, organ of your body. Like we need our livers to be healthy, to remain healthy and stuff like that. And so just knowing that you can regenerate that, I think is powerful. So the liver performs over 500 functions: detoxification, metabolism, nutrient storage, all this kind of good stuff, hormone regulation as well. Alcohol is toxic to the liver. It is only going to inflame it and create fatty buildup, which is not good. And so it is one of the coolest and most dramatic changes that you can see. So you might notice this, you might notice more consistent energy, and that's just obvious with all the other things that are stacking as well in your favor. Your sleep is getting better, you're not like having to throw this toxin at your body that's like working overtime to try to detox it. You might have better digestion, you could have clearer skin, less bloating and stuff like that, and also improved mood because your hormones are fluctuating more normally too. So it just becomes more efficient, it becomes healthier. You can also add things that are good for the liver like milk thistle teas. I think dandelion tea is a good one too. So you can always look into things that are also really good and regenerative for the liver. A lot of cruciferous vegetables are going to be super, super helpful too. And it just is so important. Okay, let's now go to cholesterol. So I talked about C-reactive protein earlier, how C-reactive protein is the higher it is, it's more inflammatory for your body. Now, a lot of people don't think that alcohol has anything to do with cholesterol. In fact, some people think that alcohol lowers cholesterol because it could raise HDL cholesterol, which is the good cholesterol. But a lot of people, when they have more inflammation in their body from the alcohol, which is a given for most people, it also raises their cholesterol. So there is a huge correlation actually with drinking and higher cholesterol. Again, the amount of Americans who are on pre-diabetic drugs, who are on hypertension drugs, who are on statins for cholesterol, like all of these things, I'm not saying that like to demolish all of those, but like what if we tried this first? What if this was the first response before people got on medication? How different would our medical system be? How different would our health coverage even be if like this was the first plan of attack? Because it's so freaking effective. So they were able to study it 5 weeks without drinking. Again, a little over 31 days, but come on, you guys are troops, you can handle it. You can go a little over into February, maybe even into March and April and May and stuff. So 5 weeks without alcohol proven to lower cholesterol by about 20 to 40 points for the whole study average. So that was the average number, 20 to 40 points off of your cholesterol. Now, again, like if you have any number above 200 or you're worried about cholesterol, you're worried about heart disease risk, you're worried about, family things that have happened in the past, this is the smartest thing you could do. And I was one of those people. So like I said, I mentioned my grandmother passed on my mother's side from heart disease. And I remember the first time I got my cholesterol checked. They usually don't do it for children. So I wasn't until I was like 24 that I got it checked. And, I'm a ballerina. I think I eat pretty well. I'm like, okay, I'm going to have the best cholesterol ever. I was getting it checked at work and my work was very diverse in ages. Like there's people who were 70 there. So I was like, okay, I probably have really good cholesterol compared to people who are in their 70s, right? And I got my test results back and it was 240. And, there's a lot of debate nowadays about like what the proper limit of cholesterol should be. I think we're upping it now because it went like down a little too much in our guidelines. But anyway, without this, suffice to say, that was way too high for the age that I was at. And I was like, what the hell? Like, what am I doing wrong? I'm a ballerina. Like, I'm not this huge, fat, obese person who is like in their 80s or something. Like, how is this possible? And again, I went into the deep dive of how to lower cholesterol. I tried a lot of different diets, a little different plans, a lot of different things. And I had it retested probably every year since then. And again, some things would kind of marginally lower it. Some things would heighten it. And then I went alcohol free. And the year that I went alcohol-free, I retested my cholesterol. Mine dropped by 50 points. 50 points, right? Again, all of this worry, all of this concern that we have in all these other areas that we can do in our lives and all these little hacks and stuff like that, like this is the easiest one. And it makes you feel safe to know that you're not setting yourself up to have all of these problems and risks later on. So we probably know that, cholesterol does lead to heart disease and stroke, and that you can get your blood work done and actually see if it's making a difference for you or not on your lipid panel. Oh, and fun fact. So some doctors think that, alcohol is good for your cholesterol because it's heightening HDL cholesterol. That's the good cholesterol. That is true. Alcohol does raise HDL cholesterol. So every time I had my cholesterol checked, my HDL levels were really, really high. But studies have proven that when alcohol is artificially raising HDL cholesterol, it doesn't have a protective benefit. So they were able to study that somehow, and they found that when it's up naturally, HDL, that's great. You have very protective benefits against heart disease. But when it's inflated artificially by just drinking, no, not good. It's not doing any of the protection that you actually want it to do. So super, super interesting. Okay, next one, cancer. So most of us can't feel whether there's changes in our cancer response in a month, but they've been studying it and were found that in 5 weeks without drinking, that cancer markers in the blood actually went down. Again, I don't even know how they test that. I'm not sure what markers they're checking, but this came from a really large study that 5 weeks without alcohol lowers cancer markers in the blood by 20%. Now, this is obvious in a way because alcohol is a carcinogen. We have known that since 1988. Since 1988. I didn't know it though. I didn't know it as I was growing up, right? Everyone's drinking. It's so normal, right? Alcohol is a carcinogen. It is literally gasoline. It is ethanol. It is what we put in rocket fuel. It is so bad for our bodies, and we don't want our cells to be made out of that as they're regenerating. It is indicative in 22 different types of cancer. And one of the highest ones that you don't have to drink very much is breast cancer. There's the biggest connection between alcohol and breast cancer because even 2 drinks a week increases a woman's breast cancer risk by 15%. Now, I don't know about you, but back when I was drinking, if I only had 2 drinks in a week, I thought I was the healthiest maven around, right? And to know that only 2 drinks a week is heightening your cancer risk that much, like I wish more people knew it. And sadly, the alcohol industry sponsors a lot of like Breast Cancer Awareness Month and events and stuff like that, like they are so tied. It's basically very similar to cigarettes. It's imagine as if a cigarette company was sponsoring a lung cancer awareness month. It is just like, no, that makes absolutely no sense. So you're doing the best for yourself when you're doing dry January and you continue in your alcohol-free lifestyle. You are, making a lot of preventative changes. Especially know that you are also able to like eat better and work out better. Like I was always like making progress in my healthy lifestyle and then going backward every weekend and feeling like I had to start like 5 steps backward. So it felt like it's so much easier to eat better, so much easier to maintain my workout routine. Just knowing that like everything is getting better in my health when I'm not alcohol free. And it's called the domino habit. So domino habit is when one habit affects all the other habits. And if we're just honest with ourselves, is it easier to eat better when you're drinking or not? Is it easier to work out when you're hungover or not? You know what I mean? It's just like you can see all the other lifestyle factors are going to become easier for you. Plus, just not drinking in itself is healing your body on a massive, massive level. Okay, I have one more for you guys. The brain. So we talked about the brain with the gray matter and the neurons. I want to bring in one more is the neurotransmitters. Again, I talk about this a lot, but it's just so poignant. I think I need to hit it hard. So when we are drinking, alcohol is lowering our receptivity to dopamine. It actually pumps out dopamine in a very artificial way, the same way that like cocaine or heroin does. And what happens is your brain knows that this is very unnatural, and so it shrinks the receptors that catch dopamine and minimizes those. So you have fewer receptors in your brain. So even though you're drinking, you're releasing that dopamine, your brain is desensitized now to dopamine. Not just when you're drinking, but also in all the other things that are supposed to make you happy in life. You literally just can't feel it. You're numb to it. Not when you're drinking either, only. Any other time, right? When alcohol is a regular part of your life, it's also going to be apparent other times. And I don't know about you, but I felt this, right? I felt like things that were supposed to bring me a lot of wonder and joy, I just kind of felt like blah. But happy hour was super exciting, right? Because I got that dopamine rush and everything else was just like apathetic, boring, right? Alcohol also lowers your GABA and your serotonin, so other things that make you feel calm and happy. And it pumps out a ton of stress hormones. So every time you drink, you're pumping out cortisol, adrenaline, and yes, we have those naturally in our bodies, but like it's almost as if your body is getting that fight or flight attack every day, every time you drink. It's like, whoa, it's just going crazy in your system. So it can take a while for everything to rebalance, but again, between that 4 to 6 week mark is when you can start to notice that your dopamine receptors are starting to not be retracted, but starting to come out so that I can actually receive the dopamine. What this feels like is that little mundane things start to make you happy. You start to notice more pleasures and joys in your life more often. Serotonin and GABA go up, and then those stress hormones aren't pumping so ferociously. So yes, you're still going to feel stressed in your life and have stressful moments. And, we have a rush of cortisol every single morning. It like wakes us up, but it's just not going to be, it's going to be like a molehill instead of this huge mountain. And I know I stopped stressing out so much when the alcohol was removed for me. So anyone who wants to just have a better mood in general, wants to feel happier, calmer, not feel so neurotic, not feel so anxious, this is a big one. And again, in between that 4 to 6 week mark, it can be different person to person. So again, really, really depends on your other habits. I would just keep going. If you haven't seen this effect yet, if you're like Eeyore right now and you're like, Carolina, I don't believe you, just keep going. It will eventually start to rebalance these chemicals in your brain. Now, I think this was really, really insightful, like just to know how powerful our body is to rebalance. Not necessarily everything in your life gets fixed though, just because you're not drinking. And we had a really powerful guest on a few weeks ago about how like going alcohol free actually revealed to her how much more healing her body had to do. And that's what a healing journey is, a health journey is like you're always optimizing, you're always getting better, but just knowing like what a huge quantum leap you're gonna make when you remove that alcohol. And especially if you're doing dry January and you just wanna get really excited about what's happening to your body this month, like it could be a really good incentive to keep going into February and continue in this upward spiral. I've had clients who have gotten off medication, like lifelong medication, lost 20, 30 pounds, like reverse diseases, like they had diabetes and they came back to their doctor saying like, okay, now you're in the pre-diabetic range now, like a lot of things improved. It's just crazy. It really is crazy. And especially for those of us who are into longevity and health, or we have some risks already from maybe our family history, or we already have some apparent like symptoms and our doctor's kind of warning about us some stuff, like this is the lifestyle you definitely want to adopt to be as preventative as possible in your alcohol-free lifestyle. So I hope that was really insightful for you and just learned some new things. And again, if you are experiencing this yourself, hopefully you'll start to see those changes. Just keep going. You know, if you don't see it yet, again, 2 weeks for someone might be 4 weeks for you. But just know you're doing literally the healthiest thing you could possibly be doing for your body, your brain, your skin, your gut, like all of it, you know what I mean? And that's why I just think that going alcohol free is not only going to make you look hotter, it's going to make you wealthier because you're not spending money on alcohol. It's going to make you smarter because you have your full frontal lobe on, all that gray matter there, the neurons are firing, nothing is getting, diminished because of alcohol. You are going to just be so much more confident, more creative. You're going to be like aging in reverse, basically. Who wouldn't want to do it? Who wouldn't want to try it? So we just started our dry boot camp and that is in full force. But if you missed that, I do recommend you check out Euphoric the Club because we focus on losing the desire to drink there and we do really fun lifestyle challenges. So I'm going to hit that show notes, the link in the show notes below for you. And then also if you're interested in teaching this stuff to other people and you want to help other people go alcohol free and really grow a business and helping people make mindset shifts and improve their lives, be sure you're on the waitlist for the next 5X certification. It's going to start in the spring. It is a life-changing program. It has changed so many people. Not only when you're a coach, you get to help other people change their lives, but your life changes dramatically. I know people in this program who have been able to quit toxic jobs, go full-time into their business, make, incredible amounts of money in their business, travel more, host retreats, get on podcasts. Like if any of that is interesting to you, I definitely recommend getting on the waitlist. And if you already have a business and you're a coach and you really want to deepen your skills, this is where you learn how to become a subconscious change expert. So do check that out. I would appreciate so much if you like this episode, leave a quick review. It helps people find it in the algorithm. Make sure you're subscribed. We also have a YouTube version you can go check out if you want to watch the video. And be sure you're following along at euphoric.af on Instagram and that you're also on the email list because I send out some really good goodies, some really cool newsletters and stuff like that. So I would love to see you there as well. All right, happy dry January. Stay tuned for the full series. We're going hard next week on what to do with your partners and your friends who might not be changing, but you are.